You know, as I kind of really leapfrog my way through all of these different books and manga as I read them, there's normally one that I'm almost always pretty excited to get back to reading. Right now, that manga is definitely Trigun. And without wasting any time here, we're going to jump right on into where we left off. And that's with Vash and Wolfwood fighting the two guys from the end of the last volume. And I really have no idea how I'm going to continue to come up with new ways to praise the art in these manga, because this is just great. It just continues to be utterly stunning in the way that it's done. It might not be the most hyper detailed or the hyper realistic. I don't know how to explain it. It's just ultra stylized, and just the cool factor in the things that he's drawn and the way that he draws them is like an 11. It's kind of crazy. Also, I could see this being a negative for some people as they read through it, but the way that he does it and the way that he puts the panels together doesn't necessarily read very well sometimes, and it can be quite confusing to keep track of what's happening inside of the action as you go through it. Let's just say I'm glad that I read Blam before I read this, because that is essentially similar in the fact that it's difficult to keep track of what's happening. And that's almost told exclusively through the visual medium, so you have no choice but to keep track of it. So transitioning over to this one, you're like, okay, it's a skill that I kind of have a little bit of experience with at this point, so I'm not 100% blindsided by it. Anyway, Wolfwood and Vash are in the middle of their fight. Wolfwood's going to constantly be called a traitor as he goes through the fight, because if you remember, he technically is kind of, or was, working for Knives. And Vash will end up calling the guy that he's fighting, which is like the puppet master guy, Emilio. And that guy doesn't know who Emilio is or why Vash is calling him that. And it's even going to get to the point where Vash starts calling out all of these various names at him as they fight. And I'm assuming that these are people that the guy Emilio, or the puppet master, whatever you want to call him, has killed in the past. To be honest, I'm really not sure. But it really does just go to show the value that Vash places on human life in general, to the point where he basically remembers everybody that he's come in contact with over the years. Maybe not everybody, but enough to call these people out by name. Also, I want to point out that this fight goes on for 5 chapters, and the volume is only 7 chapters long. Like, it is literally almost the entirety of this whole volume. It is wonderful. I just really appreciate a good fight scene that can go on for a long time and just really be engaging and entertaining throughout, because that's a slippery slope. If it goes on for forever but we're not engaged and invested in the fight, then you're going to check out, and then it's going to feel like a waste of even being there, in which case I would much prefer an abbreviated fight that is much quick, direct to the point, and gets out so we can do something fulfilling. That's not the case with these. These are really, really enjoyable, and I have a great time with them. So I guess what I'm saying is, so far, these have been pretty well done. Anyway, after the fight, Vash and Wolfwood are going to wake up in the hospital, and this, of course, is going to lead to some ridiculous banter and interaction between them, and some nice lighthearted and comedic moments, which are much needed. And as I said in the last video, some of my favorite parts in this entire manga is just the interactions that we get between these two characters. In this section of the book, we also learn that this is the exact same place that Vash ended up after the July incident 7 years ago, and these are the people that kind of patched him up, fixed him up, and gave him his new arm when he showed up here broken and armless. We also find out that this particular crashed ship has been sending signals back to Earth for over 100 years now, in hopes that they might eventually get a reply. And now we get our very first one. Wait, what? Since when is Earth a part of the Trigun story? Like, for real. I know that we did get that one shot of Earth at the end of Trigun Stampede, and it was like the very last scene of the entire show, and they received a message, or were sending a message, or something, and it was like some dead orange planet. But even that was weird, right? And to be quite honest, I didn't even think much of it in the end of Stampede because that show itself took so much liberty and just kind of changed or added so many things. Just look at the detective guy that kind of replaced Millie in the show, you know. So when Earth pops up, they're like, we found the Seeds Project. I was like, okay, way to go, Stampede, you know? So anyway, I'm super curious to see just exactly how this is going to work and exactly where this is going to end up going. Also, did Knives pick up on the signal or something? Because, like, immediately the second they receive it, he destroys it or something. I'm not even entirely sure what exactly he does here. I mean, I don't know how he found out about it, let alone I don't even know where the fuck he is. He just kind of destroys something. Who knows? This is an example of this manga not always making perfect sense logistically. But I am glad that at this point he's taken off his weird bondage mask. It's good to see your face again, buddy. Also, we see him with Legato, and Legato makes some kind of a comment about Wolfwood in the sense of, what are we going to do about Wolfwood? And Knives just says, everything's going according to plan. He's a secret operative, and essentially a guide and a babysitter for Vash. And even though this line or thread is perfectly in line with the OG anime for the character of Wolfwood, I can't help but feel like this sense of anxiety, as I know that Wolfwood is technically still at this point working for Knives and is this on this secret mission to babysit Vash, because in the anime, he gets like semblance of a redemption arc, and I want that so much for him here, but I don't know if we get that in this version, because at this point, the stories have diverged so much, they might as well not be the same story anymore, and the anime essentially would have ended, and we're now in completely unknown territory, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I just want Wolfwood to come through in the end and end up on Vash's side, and I just don't know where he's going to land in the story, and I can't help but, like I said, feel that anxiety because I just like his character so much. It scares me where this might go and how this might end in regards to him and his arc. Anyway, now Vash and Wolfwood go back out, and some more of the gung-ho guns are sent out in search of them. Specifically, the Firefly Kid, the saxophone guy, and this guy. I'm pretty sure those are their official names, as far as I'm concerned. And then pretty much out of nowhere, Meryl gets kidnapped. And I do mean out of nowhere, because I literally had to go back and like a few pages and be like, what the fuck even happened? When it like showed the panel of her locked in a cage, and I'm like, what? No. Now, when did this happen? And you go back a couple of pages and it's just like this shot of Millie and Meryl's just not behind her anymore. So apparently that was the second. In that instant, that's when she was taken. And now she's here. And apparently now she's going to be used as bait to get Vash, which of course works. And now we're going to get our next big confrontation, which Vash and Wolfwood try to leave Millie out of entirely. And that goes just about as well as you think it would. And also in here we get this panel, and if I can figure out a way to make this panel work as the thumbnail for this video, I'm definitely going to do that. So if you clicked on this to get here, I succeeded. Sometimes I get these ideas of which panel I want to use for the thumbnail, and for one reason or another, it just logistically doesn't work out. This one's kind of on this weird tilty angle. I don't know if I can work with that, but I'm sure as shit gonna try. Now, while Vash and Wolfwood are off fighting, the Firefly Kid's going to go in and talk to Meryl, and she's going to be basically shocked that Meryl knows literally nothing about Vash, and is going to go through explaining to her who he is and who Knives is and what their connection is to each other, and the fact that they're plants. Like, she's going to get a lot of information about Vash in this little section of the story. Also, as this fight goes on, this guy, you know, that one guy, is fighting Vash, and he's upset with Vash over the July incident. And he's going to point out that Vash doesn't even remember the July incident or anything that happened there. And I can't help but realize that this almost directly parallels the last fight, where Vash pointed out that the guy he was fighting didn't remember who he was or all of these people. And this guy's now going to point out that Vash doesn't remember July or what happened there. And I don't know if this is important or significant in any way yet, or if they're supposed to parallel each other. I really don't honestly don't know. But I did feel like it was at least worth noting. And now, pretty much as we wind down and this volume starts to come to a close, nobody's defeated, nothing's resolved, and we're still essentially right in the thick of it as far as this fight is concerned. Meryl is still in captivity, and Wolfwood is going to make some very questionable decisions when he attempts to, get rid of Millie, and she won't let go and will not leave, and he ends up turning his back on her, and then ultimately just taking her out, knocking her unconscious just to be booed by a crowd of people, and he kind of screams back at him. It's just really dude, Wolfwood, I can see what you're trying to do. I could see that your head and heart might be in the right place, but yeah, that's not the way you do it, dude. Not even close. Not the right call. Anyway, yeah, questionable decision, to say the least. I mean, I guess in this situation, Wolfwood, you should just ask yourself, what would Vash do? Anyway, Knives calls a Cruella DeVille-looking chick in a fur coat in a double-ballooned blimp with bat wings and skulls on it. Yes, you heard me correctly. And at this point, this whole manga is almost like that quote from Josh Homme on the Joe Rogan Experience when he says that somebody once told him that not every song can be your best song ever, and he's just like, but why? And it's almost like that for this manga when somebody looked at MGTOW and was like, you can't have a Western that's also a space epic with also spaceships, and you're going to have these big broad-shouldered men in suits with these blues saxophones. Then you're going to sprinkle in some bondage monsters and batwing blimps. And it's almost like somebody looked at him and said, dude, you can't do that. And he went, but why? Anyway, cut to black. It's over, and I'm assuming the next volume's pretty much going to pick up like this one did, right in the thick of it, and I am totally fine with that. I'm just loving this. I'm just on a roll. This is on a roll. Everything about this is just barreling forward in the best way possible. If anything, I think this one might have dialed the comedy back a bit, although, you still get these great scenes. I can't help but at least literally laugh out loud. At least, I don't know, probably a half a dozen times in every single volume. It is truly wonderful. The action's wonderful. The mystery's wonderful. The emotional beats are wonderful. This is wonderful. I can't help it. I love it. And I'm having a blast. 9. As always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.